we give it another minute?
Yeah, I've got Ross is in the
Yeah.
lobby.
Oh, someone else?
Oh yeah, excellent. Good, it's worked.
Mm. Flooding in.
Yeah.
You still see my screen, all right? The presentation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's good. Got everything you need.
Yeah, might as well go for it, and then maybe more people can join. So if they join late, they'll just
Yeah.
come in. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, they'll come in, but yeah, I wouldn't start just yet. Give it a few minutes because
Yeah.
people
Okay.
always turn up late.
Okay.
Right. Okay. I met these.
We're just going to give it another couple of minutes. I think there was an issue with the invites going out, so just in case anyone's coming along late, we'll start in about a minute or so. Just checking polling. Still see the presentation? Yep.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. I'm just going to go for it.
Okay.
So yeah, thanks everyone for coming to the webinar. So today we're talking about how smart marketers are adding carbon to their campaign metrics. Just to give you a quick introduction, so my name's Justin. Been working in paid media for about 20 years, mainly within Google, Meta, programmatic, and lots of others. And I spent most of that time sort of focused on the usual dashboard KPIs, things that you would usually look at when you run a campaign online, such as impressions, click-through rates, cost per lead, ROI, etc. But it wasn't until sort of last year when I joined AB that I started to think about what is the impact of all of that activity. And AB put sustainability at sort of the heart of a lot of what they do. And it sort of got me thinking that there's no real kind of central place in which to measure the carbon impact of running all these ads, all these campaigns, not just that we run, but kind of around the world. So I started to look at how we could possibly build a tool that would allow us to measure that carbon impact and then allow us to improve it over time as well. So I'll come on to that in a minute, and there's a sort of a sneak peek and a link that you can use to start to measure your own campaigns later on. But as a kind of a bit of background, so I mean, it probably comes to no surprise that over the last few years, the number of ads has tripled, and that's created more noise. So it's a kind of a self-perpetuating cycle in that, the more noise there is, the more ads there are, the more advertisers have to fight to get attention, which generally means more ads and more noise. And also, as well as that, there's a lot of new technology which comes along to try and better target people, to try and get the message out there in front of the right audience. But all that noise comes at a cost. And all of that information, all of those ads, all of those background processes need to be stored, retrieved, processed, served. And all of that involves more and more power all the time, which is why we're seeing, and these are just some of the headlines that I pulled from the last month or so, the huge amount of money that big brands like Google are investing in Meta as well, investing in building data centers, billions and billions of dollars going into building these huge mega structures, essentially, which are housing hundreds of thousands of servers to power all this activity. And actually, the International Energy Agency has projected that electricity demand from data centers will double by 2030, reaching almost 1,000 terawatt hours. To put that into context, that's the same amount of energy that the whole of Japan uses in a year. So it's a huge amount of power and a huge amount of energy that's going into this. And some of these companies will say that a lot of these data centers are being powered by renewable energy now. That may be the case. Some of it may be the case, but it's still involving a huge drain on resources. And pressure on the grid and infrastructure ultimately contributes to emissions. So why is that? And I think we don't usually think, or a lot of people don't usually think of digital marketing as something that pollutes, but of course it does. Every ad impression uses energy. Every time you see a video on Facebook or Instagram or wherever else, every landing page that loads, all of those activities going on in the background, it all needs power. And when you add all those things up and multiply it globally every day, you're looking at an enormous carbon footprint. But even if we don't see it, we can still track it, and that's what we're starting to do. So, kind of where is all that carbon hiding? And actually, a lot of the emissions aren't coming from the actual ad creative itself, which is obviously the thing that is most visible and most apparent when you're looking around the internet. Yes, it does involve energy in terms of storing that ad creative, retrieving it, and running it. But actually, underneath that is a whole number of other things. So autoplay videos are a huge drain on resources, and they're videos that basically just automatically start when you're scrolling through your feed. Most people will skip videos a lot of the time, but it's still used power to generate that. Programmatic advertising is essentially where you load a web, it could be a news page, and in the background there's thousands of different calculations going on to decide which ads appear at which pace on that page. So again, that uses power. You've got slow page speed loading, you've got third-party trackers, large file sizes, and a lot of traffic coming from low quality websites, which they're not doing anything. A lot of the time it's bots, but still using power to be able to do that. And I think it's interesting when we look at taking Facebook as an example, what happens every time you scroll through your feed, and the processes that happen are quite alarming. So someone opens Facebook, in the background Facebook is processing a real-time auction to decide which ad is shown. That's using dozens of different servers, processing bids from thousands of different advertisers, all in the space of a fraction of a second. It then chooses the advertiser based on bid and lots of other things, and then it pulls that image or video file from its storage servers. It attaches user data, interest tags, behavioral scores, and then it adds in a bit of AI to personalize it to that person as well. This is all using data and power from servers located around the globe, which will generate heat, a lot of heat, and need to be cooled. And often that happens using water or industrial air conditioning units. And then lastly, the tracking scripts are activated in the background. A lot of the time, the landing page that ad will be going to is preloaded. And again, it's all using power. And actually, the end result is the user just keeps on scrolling. So a lot of that, all of that has happened, even though someone has skipped that ad, moved on to the next one, and then it all starts again. And that's millions and millions of times a day. So it's quite scary stuff. So ultimately, that one impression triggered over 100 different server processes, consumed data, required cooling, power, storage, and transmission, only for the ad to be scrolled past in literally half a second. And there's a stat here which says that 1 million ad impressions equals a metric ton of carbon being emitted in order to serve that one impression. And obviously multiply that thousands of times, millions of times a day. It's one, just put it in context again. So one metric ton of carbon is the equivalent of driving a petrol car for 2,500 miles. And with larger advertisers, we're talking about billions and billions of impressions. So it all adds up. But good news is we can do something about it. We don't have to start from scratch. We can optimize what we're doing already. So most of the carbon savings come from things that we can change quite easily. And I've put a few examples here. So reducing the length of a video by 50% can reduce carbon by 20% for that ad. So by reducing the length of the video, it needs less storage space to store that video, less processing power to be able to retrieve it. And actually, we have to sort of course, marry this up and balance it with the performance we're looking to get from the campaign. So if you've got a video length that you think is absolutely what you need to be showing to people, then there's not a lot you can do with that. But actually, if you're thinking, I don't know if this video is a bit long, it's just something we've bunged up there, try and reduce it down by as much as you can. And actually, what you find is the performance generally improves. People's attention spans are quite limited these days with TikTok and everything else. So a shorter video can actually get better engagement than a longer one a lot of the time. Compressing images, there are lots of free tools online that allow you to upload your image ads, compress them down without any real kind of impact on the quality. And especially on a mobile, people won't be able to tell the difference between a high res image and a lower res one. And the same goes for videos actually as well. On a video on a mobile phone, you won't be able to tell the difference between a 4K video and a smaller video size, and actually you'll be saving a lot of that energy goes into that as well. Stopping autoplay videos from campaigns, again, very effective, and sometimes different platforms will allow you to do that. Again, if it's appropriate to do so, it's worth testing that. Removing low quality placements from your campaigns. Again, the platforms like Meta and Google, they can be quite sneaky in terms of automatically enabling things like display partners and other websites, other partner websites, which means when you think you're uploading and running an ad on Facebook, actually what they're doing is they're putting that out to all, a whole network of thousands of other websites, blogs, news websites, some of which, and a lot of which actually are very low quality, and they just send a huge amount of traffic to a website with no intention of converting. So turning those off, again, test it. If it's not working, turn it off. Don't let it run just in the background because it does use energy and unnecessarily. And actually, you find your performance probably improves as a result. And also, they're using a green hosting provider. So there's a few now that are appearing, and they will use sustainable resources and renewable power to power data centers. So it becomes a lot more environmentally positive to use those green hosting providers instead. So we look at the overall impact. If you were to sort of use or employ some of those actions there to reduce the carbon on the campaign, if we just take a standard £1,000 a month campaign running on Meta and Google, just implementing those changes, which won't affect performance and actually can improve performance, is the equivalent of saving a 345-mile car journey every month. And if obviously all campaigns were to do that, it'd be a huge amount of carbon that was saved. So small tweaks really do add up. And as I say, they don't have any negative impact on performance a lot of the time, as long as you test it. The thing that some advertisers, and I've been guilty of this before, is assuming things like video ads always work better than static images. That's not always the case. And actually, video ads require 7 times more energy to serve on someone's feed than a static image does. So, if we're looking for efficiencies and being a bit more sustainable, testing static images alongside videos is definitely worth doing. And there's a couple of examples here where we've run campaigns in the past for clients, and this is a travel client. So if we look in that highlighted green column there, we've got click-through rate, which is, a reasonable metric to use to assess how well people are engaging. There are lots of others as well, but that's a good indication of how well people are engaging with that ad. So those 6 ads there are images, and the one in the middle there is a video. So we can see actually the top 3 ads there were static images, and the video was down at the, towards the bottom there. And the same thing with this health client. Click-through rate there is an indication, and then a video ad 4th again in terms of the overall click-through rate generated from that ad. So yeah, videos don't always perform better. It's definitely worth testing static images alongside them to see if we get any improvement. And also, if they don't work, pause them. Don't let them run in the background because Meta will still serve them. Maybe try it again in a month or so to see if there's any difference and go through the testing cycle again. So in terms of all this is great, and we know we should be doing more to help the environment, but is there a commercial benefit to doing all this as well? And we often talk about plastic waste or pollution caused by shipping products across the world, and that's kind of understandable because that's what we see. It's visible. It's tangible. Consumers can see that and get on board with it and opt to go with companies that can show some, better environmental credentials. But as data centers become more ubiquitous and they're more visible, which they will be as they need to basically double their capacity over the next few years, people will start to talk about it more, and they are already. But I think it's only going to become more of a talking point, and people will expect brands to act responsibly and for all elements of their business to do so. And there was a study by Microsoft, which came out a year or so ago, says that 91% of consumers want to see brands demonstrate they're making positive choices about the planet and environment more explicitly in everything they do. So obviously that's a huge number there. People wanting to see better environmental credentials from the companies that they buy from. And more specifically, within marketing departments, 84% of consumers say they would likely to buy more from a company that practices sustainable advertising. And that was a report this year. And 77% of people say across the globe say in 5 years' time, they want to be spending money with brands who practice green and sustainable advertising. So it's definitely something that's becoming on people's radar more and more, and they want to see companies doing something about it, and that's only going to increase. So I like this quote, can be used in lots of different ways, but particularly with this, you can't improve what you don't measure. So it sort of comes back to what I talked about at the start. It's very difficult to measure the carbon impact of your ad campaigns. And there are no real kind of central points to base a calculation from. So what we've done is we've amalgamated a few different sources, put lots of data into a machine, essentially, chucked in a bit of AI, and created a tool that allows you to input your campaign data. So, some headline figures, and it will basically tell you the carbon impact of running that campaign. There's a link to this calculator from my website, so feel free to have a play with it. It's not technically officially launched yet. It's we're sort of announcing it, launching it next week, but it's a bit of a sneak preview. So yes, in terms of the information that's available, so I've put some actual data in here from a campaign that we ran for a client recently. So we've specified here that we ran a Google search campaign, and a Meta campaign, and a Google display campaign. And what it's asking for here is the budget, number of impressions. So obviously if you can get that yourselves, great. If you use an agency, ask them to provide this information. And then approximately what percentage of those ads that were run were videos. Obviously, we know that videos use 7 times more power, so that's going to really influence the carbon emission score. And so that will then give you this, which is basically a report to say what the carbon impact of your campaign was. So with this one, it was quite a large campaign. I think the overall budget was about £60,000 over a few months. Not all campaigns are going to be that size, but this one emitted 60 tons of carbon across those 3 channels. So a huge amount, and so that's the sort of the absolute carbon emission. But then we've got this calculation here, which is the carbon that's emitted per 1,000 impressions, which gives you an ability to do a like-for-like comparison between different campaigns. And if you were to do this month, you can make some tweaks and then use that as a score to assess the improvement next month. And then we can see here further down the equivalents. So we've got here the number of trees that would need to be planted to absorb that carbon is just under 3,000. 208,000 miles traveled in a car would emit the same amount of carbon as that campaign emitted. And again, to put that into context, the globe is 25,000 miles around, so that's like driving 8 times around the world. And the other one here is the offset cost. So obviously, there is the option to offset carbon for these campaigns, and that generally, I think our advice is to do what you can to reduce the carbon and improve the efficiency of the campaign first, and then offset the rest. And obviously, being aware of the company you're using to offset that, making sure that they have the right credentials and everything else. And we've got a graph here showing the split by the different channels. So we can see actually the bottom here, this grading shows us that Google search emitted 300 grams of carbon for every 1,000 impressions, whereas Google Display emitted 4,000 grams per 1,000 impressions. That's predominantly because channels like Google Display and Meta, there's a lot of video content being a lot of video ads being served on those platforms, but also they're more programmatic in terms of their calculations. So they will be using a lot of data in the back end to decide which ads to display. And that happens, in fractions of a second, but to get that speed so you don't notice it when you're scrolling requires a huge amount of power, which is why those are less environmentally sustainable channels than something like Google search. But again, if they work commercially and they work to get you sales and leads and whatever else you might be doing, we're not saying stop them, but just being aware of the impact of running those campaigns is a start, and then we can start to sort of do things to bring that down and make it a bit more efficient and sustainable. So this is the calculator. Please have a play with it. Love to hear any feedback as well that you might have. And again, you can find it on our website under the menu at the top. Just click on carbon calculator, or there's a QR code there if you want to scan that. So I think we're kind of coming to the end of the webinar, and I guess just to wrap up before if anyone has any questions. So I think the main thing is measure. We don't know what we can improve on before we start measuring it first. So taking a sort of a snapshot of a campaign at the moment, seeing what kind of level of carbon it emits, and then changing a few things, doing it and measuring it again further down the line is a great first step. And it's obviously much more than a lot of other companies are doing. Lean equals green equals higher ROI. So, the more efficient you can make campaigns, the more you can stop anything that doesn't work, reduce down video lengths to make it more efficient, but also higher engagement rates generally. or test static images alongside videos, much greener, and also generally results in higher ROI as well. Small tweaks, big wins. We don't have to change everything, just change little bits here and there. And then the other thing I suppose to leave you with is that customers, consumers, clients, etc., are starting to take note, and that is going to become, a bigger issue on their agenda, I think, in the next few years as we see more of these huge data centers spring up. So that's everything. Hope it was interesting and useful. I don't know whether anyone has any questions. Happy to take any now, or obviously feel free to email me as well. If not, I will say goodbye. Thanks very much, and speak to you soon. Cheers. Bye.